All right, everybody, this is Reverend Dr. Dave coming from you live from Edmonton. We're going to look at the Gospel of John as the Gospel presents itself in its own words. I think we Swedenborgians have a tendency to want to find the inner sense, when in fact the sense of the letter of the word is where all the power is. And so this mini course is going to dwell on John as we find the text. We're going to look at the text and see what John says to us in our reading. All right, so we're going to look at the first few verses of chapter 1 of John. And we're going to find a lot of information in just those first few verses. I picked the most confusing, maybe the most, the deepest section of John, the most mystical. And we're going to start with just a few verses. I think you're all familiar with these, but we're going to see what all's in it. So I'll go ahead and read what you should be able to see in front of you from John's Gospel, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, and then verse 14. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So let's look at the very first verse there. If you can read the screen, you'll see word is in red. I highlighted the word in red. And maybe some of you have wondered, what in the world is John talking about? In the beginning was the Word. What word was it? Well, in Greek, word is logos. And logos means a whole lot more than word. Of course, logos does mean word, but logos is also reason, rationality, and the reasoning principle. Logos is also truth. Logos is wisdom. It is knowledge. And logos is the truth value in a sentence or a paragraph or a book. That's logos also. And logos is what is divine in the Bible. The meaning, the truth value, the wisdom in the Bible is the logos. We use the word logos all the time to signify systems of knowledge. So our word logic, which means logic, comes from logos. That's where we get our word logic, reasoning, logic. And every time you see an L-O-G-Y, that comes from logic. It means words about, or wisdom about, or truth about whatever subject it is. So biologos, biology, is logos, it's reasoning and knowledge about life. Life is bio in Greek. Ecology is logos, reasoning, words about eco or harmony. Theologos, theology, are words about theos, about God. Anthropology is logos, words, knowledge, wisdom, about anthropos, humanity. So every time you see ology, we're thinking about logos. Now, there's a school of thought called Hellenism, which is basically Greek philosophy that came into the Mediterranean world after Alexander the Great. And in a school of philosophy called Platonism, the logos is the whole pattern of the created world. So if we were to imagine a pattern, here's how I'm going to form the world and draw up a plan. That plan for the whole world is logos. And in Stoic philosophy, a school of philosophy that came after Plato, the whole universe was created by supreme reason, or logos. So the universe itself was created by logos, and it is governed by reason, by logos. We can accept the world on the world's terms because the world is governed by reason. And if we don't accept things as they are, we're rejecting reason, according to the Stoic philosophy. So this Greek thing here, this Hellenism, logos as the pattern of the created world, John has that in mind when he says all things were made by him, by that pattern. And without him was not anything made that was made. So this logos, in the beginning was the logos, knowledge, wisdom, rationality, the pattern of the world, supreme reason. All of that is contained in John's word. In the beginning was the logos. In the beginning was the word. John goes on to say, in him was life, and the life was the light of persons. Now, we Swedenborgians know that light means truth or wisdom, but so does everybody, right? Or as we say in Canada, so does everybody, eh? Smart people we call brilliant, don't we? Brilliant, Illuminatis. When we don't understand something, we say, let's shed light on the subject. Light, the light of men. Spiritually advanced people are called enlightened people. And when we understand something, we say, I see. Again, a reference to truth, light, and wisdom being contained in that. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, the understanding. I'm using the King James translation for various reasons, but for men, we should say anthropos, people, persons. In him was life, and the life was the light of persons, the understanding. And the word, the logos, remember everything we said logos means? All of that was made flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, our English word grace has become so watered down by church tradition and by common usage that we don't understand the full meaning in the Greek language for grace. Grace is something you say at a meal, right? You say a grace. Or in the Catholic religion, it's something you get when you go to Mass or confession or something like that. I'm going to go down here. But the Greek word for grace is caritas. And you can see our word charity coming out of caritas, or caring, but also in caring, caritas, charity, you might see the word charisma in there. That's also there. Attractiveness. Caritas is where we get our word charisma. Caritas. Charisma. And so attractiveness is contained in the word grace. Also, chara means joy in Greek. Joy and goodwill. So when John says the word was made flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace, he means full of joy, attractiveness, caring, charisma, charity, goodwill. And we know Jesus was a very attractive person. He had multitudes following him. He had that charisma, that grace, that attractiveness, that people just wanted to be around him. And again, as Swedenborgians, we see grace and truth, love and wisdom, good and truth. The truth we understand to be the logos part, and the grace is the emotive, the emotional, caring, joy, attractiveness, charisma of Jesus. All of that became flesh, and the Word was made flesh. We use the word incarnation a lot around Christmas, especially when we talk about the incarnation, the birth of Jesus. And the root of incarnation is caro in Latin. Caro means flesh. Its derivative is Spanish. You know, when you get chili con carne, it's chili with meat in it, flesh in it, caro. And in means in. So if you put in and caro together, you get in the flesh. So all that we looked at with logos, the pattern of the universe, wisdom, the reason behind everything, all of that was made flesh, came into human form in the form of Jesus. And of course, that also means the Godhead, the Old Testament God, Yahweh. So we're moving along quite well here in our, how's our time doing? Good. We're moving quite well. Now, the light shines in the darkness is from verse 5 up here. And the darkness comprehended it not. Comprehended for what the darkness didn't do is an interesting word choice. The Greek word is katalambano, and it literally means to seize, to grasp, to take by force. But it also means to grasp intellectually. It means to comprehend or to understand. So it means to physically grasp something, and it means to intellectually grasp something, to get it. And so in a very real way, the darkness didn't get it. It didn't get Jesus, it didn't grab him, and it didn't understand Jesus either. So the katalambano, the darkness, did not comprehend it, did not overcome Jesus. It looked like it for a little while during Good Friday, but come Easter, we see that the darkness did not overcome the light. Now we're going to get into a little bit of intertestamental literature. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it, did not get it, did not seize it, did not understand it. And I think that line from John is a reference to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Because in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a lot of literature about a big cosmic war that's going to take place between the angels of darkness and the angels of light. And when John says the darkness and the light are in conflict, the light shines in the darkness and the darkness didn't overcome it, I think he has in mind this cosmic battle. Now, the cosmic battle between light and dark happens inside a person, an individual, and it also happens cosmically when the angels of light fight the angels of darkness. And so I've excerpted a few passages from the Dead Sea Scrolls about this cosmic battle. And if this were an interactive seminar, I'd have people read it, but I'm going to read it since we have too many people to actually participate. So Dead Sea Scroll 1QS3 goes, he created man to rule the world and placed within him, within a person, two spirits so that he would walk with them until the moment of his visitation. They are the spirits of truth and of deceit. From the spring of light stem the generations of truth, and from the source of darkness, the generations of deceit. You see the light and darkness here in the Dead Sea Scrolls? And the hand of the Prince of Light is dominion over all the sons of justice. They walk in the paths of light. And in the hand of the angel of darkness is total dominion over the sons of deceit. They walk on the paths of darkness. From the angel of darkness stems the corruption of the sons of justice, and all their sins, their iniquities, their guilts, and their offensive deeds are under his dominion. I'm just going to make that a little bigger because I see some of you are trying to read it. In compliance, let me see, offensive deeds are under his dominion, in compliance with the mystery of God, until his moment. And all their affections and their periods of grief are caused by the dominion of his enmity. And all the spirits of his lot cause the sons of light to fall. However, the God of Israel and the angel of his truth assist all the sons of light. He created the spirits of light and of darkness, and on them established every deed. On their paths, every labor, and on their paths, God loves one of them for all their eternal, and all his deeds he takes pleasure forever. The other one he detests, his counsel and all his paths he hates forever. And just a couple more brief passages. Listen to this. For the instructor, this would be of the Qumran community. The first that first passage was about the spirit of light and darkness in every individual. Now we're getting into the cosmic battle. The first attack by the sons of light will be launched against the lot of the sons of darkness, against the army of Belial, against the band of Edom and Moab and the sons of Ammon and Philistia, and against the bands of the Kittim of Ashur, who are being helped by the violators of the covenant. And the sons of justice shall shine to all the edges of the earth, and they shall go on shining up to the end of all the periods of darkness. And in the time of God, his exalted greatness will shine for all the eternal times, for peace and blessing, glory and joy and length of days for all the sons of light. And on the day on which the Kittim fall, there will be a battle and savage destruction before the God of Israel. For this will be the day determined by him since ancient times for the war of extermination against the sons of darkness. On this day, the assembly of the gods and the congregation of men shall confront each other for great destruction. The sons of light and the lot of darkness shall battle together for God's might. Between the roar of a huge multitude and the shout of gods and men on the day of the calamity. So you see here the Dead Sea Scrolls and a lot of literature before John were talking about this cosmic battle between light and darkness, both within the individual, sin and truth, deceit and truth, and then on the battlefield, a real battle between um, the angels of darkness and the angels of light. So when John says the light shines in the darkness and the darkness overcame it not, he's probably has this in mind when he is talking about that. All right, now I've been going now for, it looks like 52 minutes. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. No, I'm sorry, 20 minutes, right? 23 minutes? I understand I get 40 minutes and then open it up to conversation. If I'm wrong, somebody please correct me.
No, that's correct. You just have to end it at 5:20 our time.
Right, right. And all right, so 2, 3, 4. It's okay. I have about 15 more minutes to talk, right? Or 20. Okay. So that's a brief excursus of the first, all of that I pulled out of the first few verses of John's Gospel, chapter 1, 1 through 5. And I added 14 in it also. Now there's a curious part that I'd like to talk about when the priests and the Levites asked John the Baptist, who he is. They asked John, I'm going to read now from these dark verse, highlighted in dark, boldface, are from the Gospel of John, verses 19 to 23. This is the record of John. When the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, who art thou? And he confessed and denied not, but confessed, I'm not the Christ. And they asked him, what then? Are you Elias? Namely Elijah. And we'll get into why they asked him if he's Elijah. And he said, I am not. Then they said, art thou the prophet? And we'll get into that in a minute. And he answered, no. Then they said to him, who are you? That we may give an answer to them that sent us. What sayest thou of thyself? And John's reply is very important, and we're going to look at it. He said, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, as said the prophet Isaiah. All right, why did the priests ask him if he's Elijah? That's because there were many prophecies like the one we saw about the war between light and darkness. And there were many prophecies, they're in the Bible, about a terrible day in which the whole world was going to be, some passages say, like a smelter's furnace burnt up, and a whole world wiped away and destroyed. And then God was going to set things right. It was a terrifying day. And before this happened, the prophet Elijah was supposed to come and announce, all right, guys, it's happening. So when they asked him, are you Elijah? They were basically asking him, is this when that terrible day of judgment was going to happen? And I'll read you from Malachi 4. This is one Bible passage that talks about that terrible day of judgment. So if you can see it on your screen there, surely the day is coming, it will burn like a furnace. All the arrogant and every evildoer will be stubble, and the day that is coming will set them on fire, says the Lord. Not a root or a branch will be left to them. But for you who revere my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its rays. You will go out and frolic like well-fed calves. Then you will trample on the wicked. They will be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day when I act, says the Lord Almighty. Remember the law of my servant Moses, the decrees and the laws I gave him at Horeb for all Israel. And here comes the prophecy. See, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the hearts of the children to their parents, or else I will come and strike the land with total destruction. All right, so you see, it's kind of a scary passage. And there was a lot of talk that this was going to happen real soon when Jesus was born. And so they asked him, are you Elijah? Should we get ready for the day that'll burn like a furnace? And John's response is, no, not at all. Look how John responds. I am the voice of one calling, in the wilderness prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway. The uneven ground shall become level, the rough places a plain. The glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people shall see it together. You who bring good tidings to Zion, go up to a high mountain. You who bring good tidings to Jerusalem, lift up your voice with a shout. Lift it up, do not be afraid. Say to the towns of Judah, here is your God. And listen to this. Remember that day that's going to burn like a furnace? John says he tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms. He carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. So the Levites and the priests were anticipating a dreadful day that'll burn like a furnace. And John is saying, no, what's coming is somebody that's going to tend to you like a shepherd and hold you in his arms close to his heart. The rough places are going to be leveled out. The rough places plain, a highway in the desert. No, this is what's really coming. So John sets their nerves at ease. Instead of the day burning like a furnace, we have a shepherd leading people gently, and the words, do not be afraid. Okay, I went through all of this really fast because I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get out the material I wanted out there. But I'm fine opening it up now for question and answer. I guess I've got about a half hour left. Okay, so I don't know how we're going to handle question and answer. Nobody really gave me instructions about that. Central office, do you want to field the questions?
Sure, people can raise their hand or they can put something in the chat that they want to ask a question, and then we can ask them to unmute if you want to do it that way. So if anyone has any questions, you can either raise your hand with the little reaction button at the bottom, which will launch you up to the top, or you can just say, hey, I have a question, and I'll unmute you. Looks like Robert has a question.
You're muted, Robert.
No, I'm not. I didn't see any questions. I didn't want to leave my good friend Dave hanging. This might be a small point, but it's not incompatible. The Great War, the Day of Tribulation, and the furnace, with the reading from Isaiah, because in the Great War, the good are still going to be saved, right? You're going to walk on the ashes of the enemy that's defeated. So the struggle between good and evil is not necessarily missing from Isaiah, but he's just simply in one sense, he's talking about the end result for all those who follow the Lord. But then I realized that there's a reason why he gave that answer and not another part of Isaiah, which does talk about the great and terrible day of the Lord that is coming.
There's no doubt the Isaiah passage is an apocalyptic passage. It is about the end times. John just was careful to select, as you say, the gentle part from Isaiah, because he could see everyone was terrified.
Okay, thanks.
Paul Deming has a question.
First of all, thank you, David. It's always good to see you.
Yeah.
I was intrigued that you were quoting the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I wondered if you've studied those. I have always been puzzled by a passage in John 7, and I think it's 38, but Jesus is at the Feast of Tabernacles, and he's describing, let he who is thirsty come and drink. And then he said, as the scriptures have said, rivers of living water will flow from within. And I think perhaps in the Greek it says out of his belly or something, but there is no place in scriptures that says rivers of living water will flow from within. And I wonder if you have ever seen that in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Nothing's coming to mind. No. That rivers of water, no. Well, crossing the Jordan, the Jordan River is there, but nothing like living water that I know of. I'm not saying it isn't there. I'm saying I don't know about it, no.
Lon Elmer has his hand up.
I'm unmuted. There we go. It's a comment as opposed to a question. First of all, David, thank you. It's always a delight to hear what you have to say. And the comment was, when you're talking about the battle between light and dark, it reminded me of the early part of the Quran, where jihad is defined as an internal struggle, which has now become perverted by the dark people into being an external struggle. And then a comment on the waters thing. These folks lived in the desert, so water was a nice commodity. I always like to take scriptural quotes in context of where the people were living and what their lives were like. So that's my comment. You want to react to that?
Sure. I'm no scholar of the Quran, but the people I do know that are affirm what you said, Lon, about the jihad being large. The great jihad is within the individual, and the lesser jihad is among humans fighting each other. So the cosmic battle is there. It goes way back to Persia, actually, the apocalyptic literature, Zoroastrian religion. It crept into the Hebrew scriptures, and from then into the Christian scriptures. And you're absolutely right. Water, speaking of your water, to people in the desert, they just built a fountain in Edmonton dedicated to one of the Muslim caliphs that lived maybe 500 years ago. And the monument they made to him is all made out of water. It's a table of water, it's a fountain, it has pools everywhere. And we're living in Alberta, right? I'm not quite getting it until a friend of mine says, well, Dave, you have to understand where a lot of the Muslim people live in the desert or in very hot climates. And so water is sacred to the Muslim religion. And, Christianity, baptism is one of our core, it's one of our two sacraments is baptism with water.
John must have read a lot of Ezekiel because he uses some of that same terminology in Revelations, particularly regarding water, because in Ezekiel he describes the water flowing out from the temple, and water, a river going down to the Dead Sea where it brings everything to life that was dead. And in Revelation, and also he describes the trees growing on both sides of the river and the leaves that will be healing for the nations. He uses the same terminology in Revelations, I think 21, 22. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you again for that. Very interesting.
In the Persian religion, the Zoroastrian religion, in the last days, everybody walks through a river of molten iron. And if you're a righteous person, you won't get burnt by the river of molten iron. And if you're unrighteous, the molten iron will burn off your impurities and you'll make it through the river too.
Well, I think when Jesus is inviting people to come and take a drink, he's asking us to drink of the word, the logos.
The logos, yes. Truth, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions?
Albert does, I think.
Albert? You're muted, Albert.
Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, the walking through molten iron, that reminds me of a firewalk. There was, that movement in the new wall, 100-degree ashes, and if you relax, and don't tense up, then the water goes to your feet and you'll be fine. But if you're tense and afraid, then it dries up and you get burned in the firewall experience. So in the New Age movement, so that teaches self-confidence and remembering where you're at. Thank you.
That's an interesting observation, that our own anxieties and fears and tensions can cause harm when otherwise wouldn't, might not. Yeah, I've never, I don't know much about firewalks except that I've heard of them, and they were big. When was that? The 90s, late 80s, 90s. Every business major was doing a firewalk or so. Seems like, yeah.
All right, we have a question from Christina.
Yeah, I don't know if I missed this in your talk. I thought your talk was so good. I was taking notes the whole time. When John was asked, "Are you Elijah?" and then he was asked, "Are you the prophet?" I didn't catch, was that one and the same, or is the prophet someone different?
Someone different. I skipped over that. I had it in my text. The prophet is a vague reference to Deuteronomy, and it assumed huge mythic proportions. I'll read you the quote from Deuteronomy. It's Deuteronomy 18:18, and it goes like this: I will raise up for them a prophet like you, referring to Moses. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. The end. That's it. And yet from that one sentence, they were all anticipating this wonderful prophet like Moses that was going to come in the last days. A huge mythology developed from that. And by the way, I can make my notes available. They're typed up as a Word document. If people are interested, I don't know, Brittany, I could post them somewhere, or I don't want to email out 50 versions, but there might be a way.
What people can do is they can email me and I can put together a list to send to you. I'll put my
Okay.
email in the chat right now.
Good. So if you want a copy of my notes, email the central office and she'll send me a list and I'll make a batch mailing out to whoever's interested. And by the way, I'm talking with Jim Lawrence about doing an expanded version of John through the Center for Swedenborgian Studies, possibly in the fall. We're still talking about it. I don't have anything definitive, but you'll get more than 4 verses if the course goes.
Nancy wanted to know, could you please give a definition of righteous? It seems to always have a negative connotation in casual conversation.
I think in casual conversation, righteous tends to mean self-righteous, and that always has a negative connotation. Righteous has as its root the word right, doing what's right, doing the next right thing, doing what's good, doing what's right is righteous. But it's one of those words like grace, I think, that the church and certain factions within the church have co-opted, such that righteous has negative connotations, and the denotation, the original meaning, has been lost in our society. Another word time you often hear righteous is righteous indignation. And righteous indignation is when you're indignant for the right reasons. But again, it has a kind of a self-righteous, holier than thou characteristic. Maybe we can't use the word righteous anymore. I think we can still use the word good. A good man or good woman, a good person.
Marianne Fisher asks, would the work Dorothea Harvey did with the Dead Sea Scrolls add anything to this conversation?
Well, that's an interesting question. I minored in Dorothea Harvey when I went to Urbana University. It was Urbana College then. But back then, I wasn't aware of what she had done with the Dead Sea Scrolls. I must confess ignorance here. I'm not familiar with her work on the Dead Sea Scrolls, but anything she laid her hands on turned to gold. So I'm inclined to be prejudiced towards it being valuable.
Is there any other questions that people have? There's a bit of a discussion reacting to some of what you said that you can read.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
On the chat?
On the chat, yeah. Karen Fowle has been posting a bit about the depth for word as a logical structure is very interesting. One could almost say the same thing about music.
Oh, where's that about music? I'm looking for that. Oh, Joy Barnitz has a question.
Okay. You can unmute if you'd like.
Hi, David. It's Joy.
Hi, Joy.
Hiding behind my labyrinth. I'm just curious if you have
that's
any.
You there. Okay.
Have any comments about John Shelby Spong's book, The Fourth Gospels: Tales of a Jewish Mystic? I found that very useful, and I've noticed that Swedenborgians have a rather are rather more affectionate towards the Gospel of John than many of the Christians I come across, who find it obscure compared to the Synoptic Gospels.
Is that the Spong that wrote Why Christianity Must Change or Die? Yeah, all right. Well, Swedenborgians like John because he's the most mystical of the 4 Gospels. And it's only in John that you find the statements, I and the Father are one. He who has seen the Father has seen, he who has seen me has seen the Father. The Father is in me and I am in him. You don't find that language in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. And since we are so monistic in our understanding of the Godhead, we like John. And other Christians might find it rather abstruse or mystical or too theoretical for their tastes. I don't want to speak for them. Now, what was the specific question about Spong? Spong.
I was just curious whether you had read that particular book of Spong's. I know several mainline Christians whose view of John was changed profoundly when they read Spong's book because he makes it comprehensible and maps it to some of the things that are more familiar and accessible. My experience has been that John is, as you say, too mystical and too high a Christology. I hadn't thought of it as being too monist, but I think that's also a challenge for people who have grown up with a triune God concept.
Yeah. I've been getting into some really interesting conversations about the Trinity with my ecumenical colleagues up here in Edmonton. And there's a lot of ways to approach the question of the Trinity. And when you start out with the presumption that there's one God, then you put the ball in their court. Okay, let's agree there's one God. Now the ball's in your court. Explain.
Well, thank you very much, David. We're about out of time.
Great.
And,
Thank you all for attending. I enjoyed seeing all your faces, the few of you that are on my screen. Hi, Hart, Albert, some of you are old friends of mine, my brother, Kurt, Robert, Karen's picture. All right, everybody. I'm going to leave the chat room. And thank you again for coming. It was a pleasure to share these notes with you. And make sure you let the central office know if you want a copy of my notes. Oh, wait a minute. Before everybody signs off, if it's not too late, I have a full text of my commentary on John that I'm making available to whoever wants it. It's about 160 pages or 140 pages. And it's all in a Word document. And it was funded by the Jungerich Fund, so I can make it available for free to anybody that wants it. If you want my full commentary on John, again, contact the central office. I'm talking with them about how to put it up on our webpage. But right now we're still negotiating, but let them know if you want either my notes from today or the complete commentary, and I'd be happy to make it available to anyone interested. And with that, I will leave. Watch this. Here I go.